So today I want to talk about the 2020 Insight ERP software made for the woodworking industry. And what I would like to do, showing you on how the solution, the overall solution works in a little PowerPoint. And then after that, I will go in a live presentation and show you an entire run through to the software in a live environment. My name is Jörg Bons. I'm the Senior Director of Business Development here, responsible for a certain territory for the North American market. And part of what I'm doing is also presenting the software, usually going on site to manufacturers, and we spent an entire day together going through the individual functionalities. And today we have an hour, just an hour to do that. So everything basically starts by creating a design. The layout of a room could be either a kitchen, could be an office, could be basically anything. And in my example here, I'm using 2020 design. And from here, you have possibilities of rendering or 360 view, like panoramic view. And I will show you this kind of functionality in a live presentation in a few minutes. So once we have that job, either a kitchen or an office or anything else in either of 2020 tools or in a third-party tool, we have the possibility of automatically importing this one into our 2020 Insight ERP system. So that means obviously you can also manually enter a job into the system, but the idea is here that once you have done the layout and the design of your job, you don't want to re-enter it, so to avoid typos, redundancy, right? We want to control that the lead time, or the entire lead time of the entire process gets shorter, so that at the end of the day, let's say you do so many million in revenue in 12 months, that using a guided system like Insight, that you have the chance getting your jobs from entered into the system out of the door in a less time, so that you maybe, let's say, by the end of October, you have done the same amount of revenue in 10 months, and you have 2 more months in order to generate revenue. That's already an ROI here, what you can use to justify purchase of software. So once we have the job in the system, the system has a workflow tool in the background. And with that workflow tool, I can control on how a job travels through the plant. So everything from estimating to acknowledgements, or if you have a step in between where you do field measurements and contract signing, then releasing into the shop, making shipments, invoicing it. So basically bringing your today or maybe your future business processes into the software in order to configure our solution in a way that you make it your own. And I particular want to mention here configuring your solution, because it's not customizing. Even after you configure the Insight workflow, you're still in the standard of the software, and yet the possibility of upgrading very easily every 3 months, where we release a new version with new functionality and new enhancements. And we want to do that because we develop only for the woodworking industry, and you want to benefit from these developments which we are doing and use that versus going out in the market, purchase any kind of software which is highly customized then for your business. You're stuck with that particular version for the next 10 to 15 years, which is usually the life cycle of software to turn around. In order to avoid that, we have these workflow tools in the background. Now, an example is, for an example, a job comes in, we want to tap into the accounting system, check the open ARs, compare it with the credit limit, and then release the job into production. Or we put it on credit hold, and the accounting department gets a notification that they have to take certain action. Other examples are a job comes in, a special line item is flagged as a special, And then the engineering department needs to get notified automatically to make certain changes on single line item, either if it's a custom wood hood or it's an island with doors on the side, or you define how the openings are for these individual sections of that island. Anyhow, that all can be controlled through the workflow, and I get into this a little bit later. So as a next step is we want to generate the bill of materials. So all the components, all the raw material is what we want to see, including we want to get a lot of drawings out of the system. So we have an engineering tool which is based on AutoCAD, and we developed a layer on top of it to make it parametric. In that case, because it's based on AutoCAD, we get all the individual drawings with dimensioning, which we can later on use on production paperwork or even online on the screen or on a mobile device within the shop. What we also do, we enrich these data by adding routings to it. So we have configurable routings. So based on how you sell a product on the point of sale side, like if it's painted, which kind of color, if it's non-painted. So based on this information and based on rules, we find the individual routing steps within the system to assign this to these individual parts. That allows us to control on how a part is really traveling through the shop. Obviously, with the routing steps, we get also the labor cost into the system. But I come to this one a little bit later. And finally, we're generating the final CNC code here based on the geometry data of the parts and how these parts are touching each other. We know exactly what's the connector, if it's the dowel, if it's a hinge. We know exactly how the drilling pattern looks like. And based on which kind of machine you have, if it's a nested-based router, if it's a point-to-point machine, if it's a dowel insertion machine, we are generating basically for those machines a final CNC program. And the operator can then easily scan the barcode, call up the CNC program, and execute that program directly at the machine. So no manual programming necessary at this point in time. So job is in the system, core manufacturing data are generated in the background. So that leaves us as the next step to schedule production. So we want to release that job now into production. And we have different kinds of technologies or techniques here, which you can use in order to release jobs into production. You can either do like job by job, release it into production, but you also have the possibility like batching multiple jobs together. Maybe you would say you have a certain ship date, like a similar ship date of certain jobs, and these jobs have similar core material. So you want to group them together for better optimization at the panel saw or the nested-based router. So you can easily do that within the system. Another possibility would be that you schedule shipments. So you build a truck, basically. Let's say you are a company manufacturing parts on the East Coast, but you have a larger project on the West Coast. And every Friday night, a truck leaves the plant. So you want to control what's going onto that truck, and also in a kind of a sequence. And that drives production and the shop floor side inside. Obviously, anyhow, at any given time, we check in the background, do we have enough material available or not? If not, then the system makes automatically a suggestion for the buyer to create a purchase order. And then the buyer can send this purchase order to the vendor. From the vendor, you receive the material, we book it back into inventory, and then you get the invoice from the vendor, where we then do inside the so-called three-way match, where we compare the invoice with the receipt and the PO. And if everything is okay, we post that one and accumulate it by general ledger. We send it over to the AP side so that you can issue the checks for your vendors. The whole thing with the suggestions for the material, and I show this a little bit later, depends on how you set up your core material, right? It could be based on safety stock, based on min-max, based on historical data, where you want to schedule something in the future. Insight also supports multi-plans. That means if you have certain things which being manufactured in another plant and maybe need a transportation order that you load, for an example, doors from one plant. Once they're done, onto a truck, you get the paperwork, you unload it, you scan it again, that you know it's received in the other plant, and then you continue processing these jobs. Another one is also what we call extended workbench, maybe better known under make or buy decisions. So if you have a seasonal business and you're extremely busy at this point in time, you may want to outsource some of your components, which you usually manufacture, to an external vendor, and then that vendor can do this for me. Obviously, maybe you pay a little bit more, but you keep your ship date and you don't delay your shipments. So once the job has been released into production, as I mentioned, the routing steps in its components. So for an example, as a side panel, that helps us guiding these parts through the shop. And not just the guidance, it's also we want to scan somewhere so that we get full visibility of where these individual parts are. With the scanning, we can sometimes call up a CNC program. With the scanning, we can also sometimes move material. So for an example, at the assembly line, if I scan that this cabinet has been assembled, I can backflash my hinges, drawer slide, or whatever I need to do at this point in time. So that means I have consumed material, and through the scan, I update inventory automatically. Again, one other point here is if I have a bill of material with my raw materials, I get my material cost for estimating purpose. But with the routings, I also get my labor cost, runtime and setup costs. So the material and the labor cost together give you my total cost. Maybe you have some overhead on top of it, but it helps you to estimate jobs prior to releasing them really in your bidding process. And at the end of the day, if you have rework and you need to consume additional material and additional labor, the system will also tell you what your actual cost is. But we go into this a little bit later. The machine integration, which we're doing here, is basically everything available on the market with a panel saw optimizer. We have nested base router optimizer, also for true shape nesting, so if you have curved parts. And we have a generating the final CNC code as well for these regular point-to-point machines. Final step here is at the assembly line, the system can control, do I ship individual cabinets? Maybe do I stack something on a pallet, which we call a kind of a container? And then the system generates for that entire pallet with all the cabinets on it, one shipping label. And then when you move that pallet into the truck, you scan only that one barcode, and the system knows what's on the pallet and moves it out of finished goods into the truck. The system will then automatically generate the shipping manifest, and the invoice can be sent automatically, maybe as a PDF attachment to your customer, and then accumulated by General Ledger, we send those information to the AR side so that you can collect for these jobs. Besides the entire process here, at the end of the line or somewhere in between, you can always schedule your service teams for field measurements, or your service teams for installation. So we have a mobile app, and I will show you this one in a few minutes within the system. Last but not least, here is a whole overview about the solution, starting on the left side where we have the end consumer, then the point of sale side, and the larger gray box represents basically inside. And the interesting part is, and we see this every time, it's not just buying software, right? It's also very often, how do I implement this software? And the inside solution is a modular solution. That means it makes it much easier to implement in phases instead of a big bang implementation. So after a short little while of certain core implementations, you get your first return of investment already. And then you continue with phase 2, phase 3, and maybe phase 4 of the implementation. And usually our professional service team defines it very clearly in which kind of phases we are implementing and what makes the most sense for individual companies. So at this point in time, I want to change over to the live presentation. Give me 1 second here. So basically, everything starts with the design. As you can see here, one of my colleagues did this pretty nice design for me over here of a kitchen in 2020 design. You see elevation views and so on. And basically, when I go ahead and push a button, I can get this panoramic view here, which is beautiful. I can go all the way around. I don't want to do this completely here to get you guys dizzy. So very nice functionality to present these to the end consumer. So I have different kind of possibilities at this point in time. I can email that file to my customers. I can save it somewhere on the network. I can place it on a website. Anyhow, in the background, and let me save this here in a special location. In the background, the system monitors a certain location. In my example here, I created on my desktop a folder here, which is called incoming. And when I place that file, save it in here, then the system will automatically monitor this one, grab that file, and bring this into the Insight solution. And to show you that this really happens, I will move another screen here so that you can see this, my incoming folder here. So, oops, let me save this here, and I switch very quickly. I save this file. You see the file is in here, and after a few seconds, because we are monitoring this location, this file disappears. So when this file disappears, the monitor process has picked up that file. And again, it could have been an email as well. And then we are bringing the entire kitchen with all the definitions of door style, species, color, and so on into the ERP system. So if I switch back to my ERP system, that's basically 2020 Insight here, where you can see all the individual modules here, and each module has sub-modules like a sales order, scheduling, everything in here, everything related to purchasing, inventory, cycle count, and so on, all your individual checkpoints you can create for your company, service management, business intelligence, and some administrative tools over here. So if I go into sales order here, and I don't put anything in my header, and I just say find, then the system finds all the jobs which I have in the system. Very often companies use reports to see how much dollar value do I have in right now, or how much dollar value do I have in production or somewhere else. So I can move this header here to the top to group by the status. For an example, I could have selected any other field, by customer, by shipment location, and so on. Now, I could, for an example, go into production and say, I want to have a group footer here. And let me expand this here a little bit. And I want to see the total. So now I see the total. It's very easy, similar like Excel, right? Now I can move this to the header, and I can see this for all the other status here. I can highlight everything, right mouse click, and I can export this to Excel. I can import as well. Or I show this in a chart, and I have a variety of charts here. Oops. Quickly mouse here. Expand this a little bit, and I can go, for an example, and drill down into the individual details of data. So very easy, I can get information out of the system, and I have the possibility of saving these views here for later, so that each individual user has their own view here. Okay, so quick refresh here. I go all the way to the bottom and see if I have a new job in here. Here's my new job, September the 2nd, new. The job number is 961, and we want to keep that in mind because we want to run this entire job through the system. So let me double click on that particular job here, go into the details, and show you like the order header information which came across from design in my case. So dates here, which kind of type of order is it? Is it a customer order? Is it a rush order? Is it a replacement order? And so on. You can come up with your own ideas of which kind of order type that is. Also, as I said, we can work with multiple plans. Here's a customer, shipping information, if it's related to a project, and so on, you name it. We have the addresses here, which came across automatically, but I can also pick different addresses if required, or even go ahead and create new ones. I have possibilities of adding contacts here if you need to calculate like commission for sales reps. That's all what the system supports here. When we come to the lines, we can see that all these lines have been imported, and going to one particular here, I can see those are the dimensions and the door styles and the species, everything required for that particular job. Now, if I view how the engineering model looks like for that particular cabinet, then I can have a preview. Basically, the system here taps into the AutoCAD version of our engineering tool and builds these together and represents these here in this graphic. The nice one is, if you go here ahead and you say, well, I want to modify this job and want to have 2 shelves in here, I say, okay, apply that. And now I go in my 3D view, then you see that the system automatically added another shelf in here. And well, I tell this always in my presentation. This is a less expensive product line. So you see here, for an example, line boring. But if I have a engineering model, which maybe belongs to a more expensive product line, where I only drill where the shelf pin pops in, then the system will automatically identify a hole where the shelf pin is located. And maybe you have a rule, one above, one below. So the system will then automatically generate a new CNC code for the left and right side panel. Same happens when I change dimensions and makes the depth less, then automatically the system will find the next lower or smaller drawer glides and generates also new CNC programs for left and right side panel because of the new drilling patterns for the other drawer slides. So still my job 961. I want to save that here with these changes. I only want to open 961 that I don't have to see all the other jobs in here. And as a next step, what I'm doing, I'm processing these jobs. So I'm just doing a status change where I say system generates a bill of material, CNC information, and also drawings and everything related to production. So in my case, if I go here to my workflows, then as you can see, for every single department, I have the possibility to create individual workflows, and these workflows, they're connected with each other. So for an example, the one I explained before, if I have, for an example, a job in a certain status and I move it to another status, then I have this rule in between, and that rule has a lot of actions here in the background. And you name it, we have thousands of actions already in the system, but you can also create your own actions. In this case, tap into the accounting system, checks the open ARs, compared with the credit limit. If okay, process the job further. If not okay, move the job to credit hold. And then send an email notification to the accounting department. Now the accounting department can move these from credit hold to credit approved for further processing, because the finance department, that group, has the user rights to do that. And again, the entire flow that I have done the bill of material processing, I can release it into production, scan in production, shipments, invoicing. this entire flow, it's really up to you on how your current or your future business processes look like. So if we go back to my sales order here, click refresh, then we would see that the bill of material has been created. So it changes in the background automatically the status once everything is done. And it was pretty quick, right? For changing for about 20 cabinets, generating the bill of material with all the drawings and everything else around it. So if I go back to my B15 here of my job, and I want to see the result, then you can see here's my entire bill of material with all the components and all the raw materials in there. Let me get more real estate here and move this over here. So we can see unit of measurement with the quantity and so on. And if I start from scratch here, I will collapse this. I see my cabinet here, details of that cabinet. I see the routing steps, particular for my main cabinet, the base cabinet, which I'm selling. So I have to go from kit to assembly, case assembly, and then load it on the truck, right? There are certain times involved with this one. Certain employees are working in this workstation. So that means for me, I can determine the cost here. I go to the cost in 1 second. As I said, the system generates all kinds of images here in the background, which you can also use on printing them on acknowledgements or on, sometimes companies have a shipment and they have a shipping label and they want to print the image of that cabinet as well on that one. I can also see all my resources, so all the kind of hardware and raw materials which I need in order to produce that job. And if I go a little bit more in detail here, then for an example, I go to side panel, I get the information for a side panel here as well. And things like, if I go to my image here, the details, but I see here, my edge is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in grain direction. So if I go back to my item details and I see my edge number 1 has a 2mm cherry veneer. By the way, we can do metric and imperial. It's really up to you. We just showcase here that we can do both. A lot of companies do imperial on the point of sale and on the purchasing side, and then metric on the shop floor side. But again, that is totally up to you and how you want to use it. But more important is here, the cut dimensions are 607. And the finish dimensions are 609. So we cut it 2mm less. These are the information which we send down to the optimizer because we know we apply a 2mm edge later on that component here on that side panel. Now, if you work with pre-mill on your edge bender, obviously we would set a status there on that machine. Then we would cut it at 608 because you shave off another millimeter before you apply the 2mm edge. Again, I know my raw material here. I know my routings. And again, even with the routings, I can see to which kind of machine it needs to go. In my case here to a wiki. And the system generates automatically in the background the CNC program, which I call up here just in Woodwork. If it would be a BSM machine, we would call it up in BSM Works. And again, I see my time in here as well. So the raw material and the labor together gives me my costing information. So I have runtime cost, setup cost, material cost, maybe a little bit of overhead and so on. And I have these for all the other components here as well, accumulated for my main cabinet. I see what my total runtime cost is, setup time, material cost is. I see additional overhead here. And when I compare this for how much I sold it according to my price list, I can see what my profit margin is. Again, this is just planned at this point in time. You can see the other columns here, they're still empty. That means once I process the job through the system and maybe have a rework, need additional material, additional labor, right? Then the actual cost gets captured in the system. And after each job or each product I'm running through the system, I know exactly where do I make money, where do I lose money, and things like how often do I have rework, and then looking at certain machines, for an example, where I have to do additional adjustments, or train and employ a little bit more to get rid of the unexpected costs there. So, but if you don't capture this information, then you never know where you have to look at to make improvements. Okay, so far to the bill of material here and the costing side. As a next step, as I said, we imported a job. We just made a status change, generated the bill of material. Now, as a next step, is we want to schedule the job into production. For that, we go to our scheduling here and production orders. And what I'm doing now, I'm creating a production batch just for that one single job. And very easily, I can say I do this for my plant number 1. My production end date here is the 4th, and 961 is my job. Again, I can use like color coding here if you prefer that. Some companies like that. One day blue, one day orange, one day yellow, and so on. So say, okay, so at this point in time, I've created a batch, like an open shell. And now I would look and say, system, begin of time to end of time, show me all my available jobs which have been approved for processing into production, but have not been released into production. So in this case, I get a variety of different kind of data here. I could look at similar ship dates of jobs. I can look at similar core material or a combination of those and other things. But in my case, I can also say, well, show me also only my job, 961, with all the details. And now I drag and drop this information in my batch. Now, typically, what I would do, I would release this here into production through multiple steps. And again, each company can have their own workflow. While I'm going through this process, the scheduler would maybe use a second screen. And let me open something else here, our dashboard. Business intelligence dashboard. And in here, I have the possibility of showing data within the system. This is more sales relevant. Let me go, I come back to this one in a second. Maybe the scheduler has a screen like this one here, where you see each individual day and you see the maximum capacity, where you would say, at the assembly line, I can load, or I can assemble 100 cabinets a day. And then depends on how much have you released for that particular day into production. The system would visualize this here. Super easy. You can do this for other work centers, like if assembly line is not your bottleneck, maybe finishing line is your bottleneck, the date range and everything can be adjusted here. So I release this batch into production, and obviously what always happens is the machine breaks down, right? A machine goes in maintenance mode. Maybe I have scheduled a little bit over capacity into the shop in certain work centers. So what I can do, I can have a closer look into what's going on in production. So I can have a view here about what's going on in my individual plants. So most companies don't have so many different plants. So I can run this also under one plant, that you can see all of your work centers and your production dates, including weekends, or if you have like holidays and so on. But now I can see that some of my work centers for a certain day, they are over capacity. And you can color code these, that they turn out red when they're over capacity, or yellow when you can move more in, all kinds of visualization effects. But important is I can double click on this one now and can drill down basically in this particular machine and I would say, well, that machine broke down, or maintenance mode, or is over capacity. And when I sort here by my jobs, I see my job 961, and I could say, you know what, these job, particular the panels here, they need to be manufactured right away. So I can reroute them to another machine. And let's say if I move it to a Biessa machine, the system would automatically generate in the background a new CNC program for that Biessa machine. It keeps the same label with a barcode on it. I'm just scanning that label now on the Biessa machine, and the system calls now the Biessa CNC program up. I have possibilities changing it into another production order, which is another production batch, which means basically I can push this job forward or hold it back a little bit. Depends on if I work with larger quantities, I can split them. And I can also make my make or buy decisions here, where I would say, you know what, I have no machine available, no other work center available. I have to send these out to another vendor that they do this for me. Okay, jobs being released into production. So the next step would be, we want to have a closer look what's going on. And we have tools here available where you can see basically your work centers in a browser-based environment. The advantage of having this one on the shop floor side is you can run this on a tablet, on a mobile device, so there's no installation of the inside system required. Any kind of browser-based system can run that. And now you can go into the details here, and you can see, well, show me all days what I do have to do at the panel saw. And let me drill down here. I have a lot of demo and data in my environment, so that I get down to my job 961. So I only want to see my job 961 and what I need to do here. And as you can see, there are different kind of components which I have to manufacture. And just by checking them off, you will see the status changes in the background, that the cutting is complete. Now, maybe for the panel saw, I don't want to scan here every single part. You can obviously also take the entire job if you want to and scan like a traveler on the card where all the components are residing on. But there, we wanted to show you here all the details. Maybe I'll pick another one so that I can explain this a little bit later. You see the camera here. That's what you can use when you use your phone, for an example, so that it uses the camera of the phone in order to scan a barcode. The other one, what we're supporting here, is also time tracking. So we can start a job, scan it, and pause it, restart it, pause it again. The system tracks all this information, and then I can do the final scan in order to complete it. Or I have also the possibility rejecting a job. I can do this through the reject button here, or I can go through this one here where I can say I want to reject it. And if I reject something, then obviously I have to select a reason type and a reason code in order to redo material. And based on my workflow at this point in time, the system would say, issue another work order for the either panel saw or another base router where you have to cut another component. So in my case here, that I redo the side panel. Obviously, when I do that, additional material cost, additional labor cost. Alrighty, so I've scanned these two thingies here, these two work orders. The nice one is it's fully integrated in the system. So at any given time, your customer service department or your supervisors, if they have a meeting with all the team members in the morning to see which job is delayed or not, they can see directly within the system here my two parts, which I've scanned. They can see directly how far a job is. So you would see, if you want to, by component, how far that job is in the process through the plant. And you can drill down, basically, you can see who scanned that part, in my case, me, with a timestamp. Was something rejected? No. And on the routing side, you can see, okay, I have done the first one, and now it's going to another point-to-point machine, and then in the parts buffer for pre-assembly. So once I release all through the shop, then obviously at some point in time, I come to the assembly line, I scan assembled products, and then I can load it into the truck. What I also wanted to show you today is a little bit on the purchasing side. So as I mentioned before, and when I went through the PowerPoint, the system always looks at how much material do I have in stock and how much, based on certain rules, do I need to order something. Let me show you an example here under this so-called purchase stock control. The system controls basically purchase to stock, purchase to order, and replenishment orders. So if I open up a certain raw material here, in my case a handle, I can see that this handle has 952 on hand, and for the next few weeks, this one has a certain demand, but I don't have enough material on hand. The material gets calculated based on a reorder point and minimum quantities and then steps on how I order something. And then we can also have a safety stock component in here. So now all of this information gets calculated by the right bottom side here, but also based on what I have seen, what I see here in these individual tabs. So for an example, on hand, I can go in here and I can see, whoa, I have 916 in this warehouse location and I have 36 in another warehouse location. So details are coming through these individual tabs here. Now, what I wanted to show you is really the system takes this information. When I push this button here, it says, Jörg, you should have ordered yesterday, well, this is a demo environment, from this vendor 500 in order to fulfill all my demand. Now, that's cool, right? I can take this one now into a purchase order, send it out to the vendor, get the material. Let me cancel this one here because we typically don't want to do this for an individual product. Typically, our buyers or whoever is responsible for inventory stock, they would go and say, I have a certain hardware classification, only hardware, only sheet goods, and so on, or saying, well, show me all my material, which I have in inventory or not in inventory, everything which I have set up in the system, right? I can highlight all of them and can say, based on this information, what I explained just now, create suggestions for me for purchase orders, which I need to fire off to my vendors. And here are basically all my suggestions, which I have to create to send it over to my vendors. Now, obviously, we can also go ahead and create manually a purchase order, which I do here. And let me create a purchase order for this pole, for this handle. So I know my vendor here, I can look it up as well. Important is here that we work on the purchasing side also with order types. So I can have a standard order, I can have office supply, I can have blanket orders like contracts with certain vendors. And then the order day is today, and promise day is today plus 2 days. The system calculates this automatically, including weekends, or I can go through the drop down here. Now I wanted to order my certain material for that particular plant, and I would say here I order the pole 96. At any given time, you can look it up with the binoculars so that every system has that to find this material by item description and so on. And let's say I order 99. So as you remember, I had to order, my minimum was 100, and then in steps of 10. So in my case, I have to correct this here and order 110. If I want to, I can assign these to a sales order, to a job, or an entire project. if I want to see cost related later on to that particular job work or project. So I say, okay, my next step is I would change the status and fire this PO. So it creates automatically a PDF file in the background, and based on my vendor information, the email address, sending the PO attached to an email directly to my vendor. Next step would be that I receive the material. Since I have not recognized that PO number, I need to look it up here. And I would say, show me all my open POs, which I have not received yet. Here it is. Make this a little bit longer. Say, okay, show me everything, go to the bottom. That should be my last PO here. And now I can, these are my 110 handles. I can now go ahead and say, receive them all. Oh, sorry, I forgot the packing list here. So the system requires, you can define what a mandatory field by, in the background, you can control that, and then they become automatically bold. So I could not process anything here until I have entered the packing list number. And you can pick any kind of the fields where you would say make them mandatory. So now I can say receive them all. I say, okay, everything has been received. Okay, get a receiving number here, which I don't care about at this point in time. Now as a next step, the vendor sends the invoice, and I want to do the invoice match. And I don't want to do it in an accounting system because I don't have all the details in an accounting system. So I want to do this in my ERP system where I have all the information available. So what I'm doing now is I'm typing what the vendor sent me on the invoice. So I type in the vendor ID here, the invoice number from the vendor, the date, and then I would say it's $218 on that invoice. Well, let's see if that is really correct, because now I'm compare this with my receipts. So if I have multiple receipts, I can push multiple line item over, but this is my receipt for that particular one. And so the extended price actually was only $205. So I'm paying $12.30 more. So if there's a reason for that and you agree, you can okay that invoice check here. And then these $12.30 would go into variant account. Or you would say, you know what? No. We agreed to $205.70, and that's what I'm paying. You say, okay. The system is completed or has completed the invoice match. And with the next status change, I fire this one off to the accounting side, that the accounting side sees for that particular vendor what you have to issue a check for. So that closes the loop, basically, of a job in the system, running it through production, shipping it, look at the entire inventory. What I haven't shown you yet is if a job also needs to be installed. So at any given time, and you don't have to do it at the end, you can do it also in between, earlier, and so on. We can create service order. And I don't have to do it manually the way I do it here. It can happen automatically through your workflow that you would say, now, when I release something into production, I already want to schedule my installation. So it creates a installation job here, 434 for me, where I can say, okay. And now I'm going into my service management and the service order and show you a little bit more details on what we're doing here. So I say, okay, show me all these jobs. Here's my 434 service order, and I can see the details. Now, I've used a template, maybe you've recognized this before, where I can say, well, it takes me 2 hours to get to that job site and 8 hours to do the installation. I can change all of this one if I want to. Maybe I have only installation, but depends on how you want to occupy your people, and you want to see when they're available or not available. You can come up with your own individual job types here. So I'd say, okay, change the status, and this workflow is basically something we have done for this demo purpose. Now, since this could be two different kind of people, somebody releases or creates the service orders, and some other one is scheduling them. That's why we have two forms here in the system, but could be the same person who is doing that. So saying, okay, here's my 434 job, and what I'm doing now is I go ahead and maybe for Thursday, I would say, well, somebody needs to go there, and somebody after that needs to do the installation. And I can have all my installer teams or service guys over here, where I would say, well, Ryan needs to go there, and then Ryan and York, they have to do the installation together. So that means when I look at my resources later on, two people are really occupied for that time. And I have different kind of views for the whole scenario. I could say, okay, I've scheduled these guys, and now I do a status change in the status pending. And the status pending is really, I fired this one off to the mobile device of these guys, and they can accept it or not. So what I'm doing now, so I'm sharing my screen here. Give me 1 second. I have to just to start a little program here that I can share my my iPhone. So you should see my phone now, and I'm opening up the mobile app here. By the way, everything sales related, what are my sales reps, what are my customers, right? Kind of jobs which I have in the system, and which kind of status are these jobs. So all of these information are available through this one here. The same like all the reports or the dashboards I'm creating, I can see that is in here as well. So once I create them, they're always available for me. For an example, what's my inventory stock, and so on and so on. But coming to my service orders, first of all, I can see my schedule when I'm booked and not. But then if I go down to my service orders, to the last one here, 434, I can see the details. So the system tells me, well, this is the address I need to go to. So it tells me how far I need to go, you know, just connecting this one with any kind of map application here. I can also go ahead and can say, you know what, I'm done. I'm starting the installation here, so I have all kinds of functionalities. And again, you can come up with your own workflow steps here. I can say, okay, I'm ready to start, and then the job is in process. Now, door is damaged. What? So I can click on add an attachment, and as you can see, there are, I can take a photo, I can pick photos which I've done prior to that out of my library, or a video. I can pick a file like video or audio recording. If I take a picture and I say I want to use that image, again here, the image, and oops, it's damaged, and I want to upload this one. So now this image has been assigned here to the job. And the nice one is I can go now to my database back. So somebody sitting in the office can see that for the job 343 here. So it does show you automatically that this image gets assigned directly to the database. So again, you can take as many images as you would like. The other one, I wanted to show you this one as well. Back to my application here. If I'm in my service order, I also can drill down. You see this here. I have the link to the job number. I can drill into the job, see all my individual line items. I can drill into the details of a line item, of a cabinet, for an example, and could say either a side panel or the entire cabinet has been damaged. So I can say it's damaged or wrong color or wrong something. And at the bottom, you see creates a replacement part. So the system generates automatically replacement components for that particular job. And the scheduler sees these now and can say, well, this replacement order, I need to include these into my next production batch so that very quickly something can be repaired and sent back to the job site for installation. So with that, we are at the end of our presentation and the hour. Thank you so much for joining today's presentation. Hopefully we can talk at some point in time in a little bit more detail about our solution. Thank you very much and have a great day.